Good evening and welcome to the Madhouse podcast. Hi, well, there's lots to talk about tonight because there's all sorts of things that people have told me. People have been sending me questions and emails, and it's all quite exciting. So kind of work my way through it and we'll see where we go. So first of all, I've got an in-game message about a character called Baron Estavios Soulsaver. The Baron has reported that he's slain the Helltroops that were threatening the city of Crownheart. And that's good news because the last thing the kingdom needs at the moment is an infernal attack coupled with its existing problems. But it's also interesting from a game perspective because the way that monsters spawn in the game is something that's developed over the last 20 years or so. And some of them spawn because they're in an area and there's adventurers present, and some of them spawn because of the actions of other monsters, and some of them spawn because of the actions of players, things that happen in the game. There's lots of different ways that they can come about, but they do tend to spawn in certain areas that are suitable to them. You don't often see Helltroops appearing near somewhere like Crownheart, which is the capital city of the kingdom. You can, but it's not common. And so when you see it, well, it's quite interesting. Now, there's no way for me to know as the GM how they appeared, because short of going back over the last 5 or 6 turns and looking at the code, I can't really tell how they got there. I can sort of trace them and track them, but the code's complex and they could have been triggered in lots of different ways. And what's interesting about Helltroops is they do have the ability to bring in other Helltroops and other infernal characters and monsters. So it is possible that they could have turned into quite a threat. And the fact that the Baron took them out early, well, he was just having a bit of fun on the discussion board in character. But it's true that he probably did just do everyone quite a service. Anyway, moving on, guilds and organisations are queuing up to pledge their support to Prince Dickon. He's the new ruler of Berenice, of course, and so it's good to see people are happy with what's going on and they're supporting the status quo. But I can assure you things are not going to stay as simple or as easy as that. As players who've been in the game for a long time know, the Grand Plot does have a way of throwing you a curveball, so wait and see what happens next. Quite exciting to see lots of new subscribers to the podcast. Thank you very much, everyone. You're very welcome. I know a lot of the people are players of the game, but we've also been picking up a few people who aren't players of the game. And in fact, 1 or 2 have now suggested they're going to give the game a shot, which is great news. It's always great to see new players coming into the game and see people enjoy the game. I've spent 20 years of my life building DungeonWorld, and a lot of the players have been with us just as long. It's a game that has outlasted most of its rivals from the early days, and in fact many much more established and big names, because it offers something a little bit different. I hope you'll like it. What else has happened? Well, on our DungeonWorld Facebook group, and do please come and join our DungeonWorld Facebook group if you're a player, because fun stuff is discussed there and we're trying to build that up as well. But this week, Ronnie Hodge, who's one of our well-known long-standing players, put up a picture of another one of our players, Chris Hurst, wearing a skirt. Now, there's obviously a good reason why Chris is wearing a skirt, and I'm not going to. I did think about putting the picture up, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that to Chris. It was quite good fun, and Chris, I thought you looked fine. Don't you worry. Paul Malone asks whether the Guild of Shadows presently has a leader. Good question, that, because most of the time there's lots of guilds in the game, and they're almost all player-run, and you can find out who the leaders are by going to their guild houses in the game and using the appropriate order to find out the contact details. But the Guild of Shadows is a special one because it's the Thieves Guild. It's very secretive, and even in or out of character, I can't tell you, I'm afraid, Paul, whether it's got a leader or not. You're just going to have to go and find out. Of course, if it hasn't got a leader at the moment, then that makes it an opportunity, doesn't it? Although I think you're probably doing enough, Paul, if I'm honest. Moving on to Bill Mailing. Bill Mailing has subbed to the channel. Thank you, Bill. Bill is, of course, the player who controls Prince Dickon, who is the current ruler of the kingdom. Bill, it really is time to start appointing some of those officers of state, because they're not going to run themselves. Paul Tracy left a comment saying he was enjoying the podcast. Thanks, Paul. Please stick around. I'm going to try and keep making it better and better, and I hope you won't find it gets boring. Got lots of ideas for the future, so do feel free to suggest any if there's something you'd like. Bruno asked me about my comment about it costing the new king a lot of gold to call up the reservists, and he wanted to know how much gold. Of course, I know why you want to know, Bruno, because you're thinking, oh, we can get the real money together, and of course you can, because in the game, players can use exploits or just really good at making money, and can build up quite a lot of gold. But saying that the king is going to have to spend a lot of gold, that's an out-of-character roleplay statement. And the gist of that really is that it's probably more than you can afford. It's not that I'm looking for players to actually pay in-game money. I'm just suggesting that the political and economic situation in the kingdom is such that the king has to carefully consider how he spends money. If you want to know how much really, well, think of it in terms of things rather than gold. So activating the reservist probably costs about as much as building a new castle. Not out of the possibilities for a king, not at all, but something that still has to be considered before you just throw money at it, unless you want to bankrupt the kingdom. Okay, what else have we got? While joking about bugs, Andy said there was nothing wrong with being able to equip his chainmail to his defense hand. And he's having a bit of fun because last turn a bug did appear where the long-standing chainmail that so many people wear did suddenly equip instead of to the body slot, to the defense hand slot. I thought it might be fun to explain how that could come about, how it could happen. So when I make new items, I've got a complicated item creation screen that there's lots and lots of things it can do, and it takes a long time to build an item because there are so many options. So what I normally do to save a bit of time is make a new item, then find a similar old item and copy that over the new item, and then just make a few adjustments, and that makes making an item much easier because I've got a kind of template to work from. Sometimes though I make a mistake and save it the wrong way around, so I save the new item over the original item. That's bad news, because if I'm making a glove and I save it over, let's say, chainmail, then and you would think there's not much similar to chainmail and a glove, but there's a lot of similar things actually in terms of the way that the in-game editor works. So if I've done that, then I go, oh dear, that's bad news. Everyone who's wearing chainmail will suddenly find they've got a glove on their chest. It's not ideal, I can assure you. But don't worry, the system always lets me know and pings when I've made that silly mistake, and that means I then have to go back and fix it. So all I do is put the chainmail back as it should be. But what I think I did is, I did everything else, but I forgot the one selection where you say what equip slot the item goes to. So I rebuilt the chainmail, everything's fine, but it equips to the defense hand instead of the body slot. And that meant that anybody this turn who equipped their chainmail found it on their defense hand. Kind of fun. Don't worry, it doesn't cause any harm. It still provides you the same level of protection. As soon as you take it off and put it back on again, it will be in the right place. I've fixed it. It's only one click of a button, but it sort of gives you an idea how these things can happen in a game that is growing as fast as DungeonWorld is. Okay, finally, Paul Malone. Paul Malone is a long-standing player who runs the Sylvan Alliance, amongst lots of other things. And Paul approached me at the Minicon this year. Now, once a year, for people who don't play the game, Madhouse has a Minicon where we all get together and we spend a weekend playing board games and having a few drinks and having a bit of fun and lots of other stuff. And it gives the players a chance to talk to me about stuff they'd like and ideas they've got. Paul approached me because he wanted a new mission for the Sylvan Alliance, which was going to be a dungeon. And Paul wanted to use a dungeon that another player, a guy called Terry from America, had sent him a design from a year earlier. So Paul's re-forwarded the dungeon to me. I'm having a look at it, and my intention is to try and use Terry's dungeon to make the new Sylvan Alliance mission. And I thought it'd be quite fun to do that on the podcast, or at least to report how it's going on the podcast. So at some point this week, maybe not the next one, but one of the next few podcasts, I'm going to go over what the ideas that Terry gave me, and then what I could actually put into practice. And it gives you an idea, if you're interested, about how the game develops and how you can build new areas. So that might be kind of fun. And I'm sure Paul Malone and the Sylvan Alliance players will be very keen to get exploring Terry's dungeon once we've made it real. That's pretty much it for today. Just to remind you, please do subscribe to the podcast. Please do like this podcast, that helps. And ring that magic bell. It will not summon the dead, I can absolutely assure you, but what it does do is let you know every time a new podcast is going up so that you can never miss one. Anyway, until then, laters.